Who did this to you? Asked the Mafia boss. By dawn, a single mom changed his city and fate. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character, Lily Carter. Lily had spent most of her life just getting by, always on the edge, always pushing forward despite the weight of the world pressing against her. As a single mother, life had never been easy. Working double shifts as a waitress, raising her son alone, and dealing with the never-ending challenges of life, she had learned to survive on sheer willpower. But tonight, something felt different. Lily was tired, more tired than usual. The long hours, the stress of living paycheck to paycheck, and the constant worry about her son's future were taking a toll on her. She wiped down the counter one last time, glancing at the clock. It was late. Too late for someone who had to be up early tomorrow. As she grabbed her purse and prepared to leave the diner, she heard the sound of footsteps behind her. Turning, she saw a figure standing in the doorway, a tall man, dressed in a dark suit. His presence alone was enough to make her pause. There was something about him, something that made the air around him feel thicker, more intense. He stepped into the diner with an air of quiet authority, his eyes scanning the room as if he owned the place. "Excuse me, miss," he said, his voice smooth and commanding, but not unkind. Lily froze for a moment, unsure of what to say or do. "I need to ask you something," he continued, stepping closer. "Who did this to you?" Lily blinked, taken aback. The question hung in the air like a weight, and for a moment, she didn't know how to respond. Her eyes dropped to her wrist, where faint bruises still lingered from her last argument. She tried to hide them with makeup, but they were still there, stubbornly marking her skin. She had no intention of explaining herself to a stranger, especially not a man like this one, who radiated danger. "It's nothing," she muttered, brushing past him. But the man's hand shot out and gently but firmly caught her arm. "Don't lie," he said, his tone soft but unwavering. Lily turned her head to meet his gaze, and for the first time, she felt like he was actually seeing her. "You've been through something," he said, his voice no longer just an inquiry but an affirmation. "And I'm here to make sure it doesn't happen again." His words were like a spark in the darkness, igniting something inside her: fear, hope, confusion. But before she could say anything, the man released her arm and nodded toward the door. "Come with me," he said, his voice now laced with authority. Lily didn't understand why, but something about him made her listen. Maybe it was his commanding presence, or maybe it was the way he seemed to know things about her that no one else did. But in that moment, she felt an undeniable pull, something that made her take the first step toward a path she never expected. As she followed him into the night, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that her life was about to change forever. As Lily stepped out of the diner, the chill of the evening air hit her skin, sending a shiver down her spine. She wrapped her jacket tighter around herself, trying to ignore the nagging unease that had settled in her chest. The man, no, Alexander, was already by the sleek black car, waiting for her. He didn't say a word, just nodded for her to follow him. His presence was overwhelming, and Lily, despite her confusion, couldn't help but feel drawn to him. As she walked toward him, she couldn't stop thinking about the question he had asked her. "Who did this to you?" His words echoed in her mind, and she felt an unsettling mix of anger and relief. Anger that someone had seen her pain, but relief that for once, someone might actually care. Alexander opened the car door for her, and with a slight hesitation, Lily slid into the plush leather seat. The door closed with a soft thud, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to relax, just for a moment. The car's engine roared to life, and they drove through the quiet streets of the city. The lights of Manhattan twinkled in the distance, but Lily barely noticed them. She was too focused on the man sitting across from her. She stole a glance at him. He was calm, collected, his sharp eyes focused on the road ahead, but she could feel his gaze on her even without looking directly at her. "Why did you bring me here?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Alexander didn't answer immediately. He turned to her, his dark eyes locking onto hers. "Because I need you to understand that you're not alone anymore," he said softly. His words were simple, but they held a weight that made her stomach flutter. She opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. Instead, she just nodded, unsure of what to say. As they drove, Lily couldn't help but wonder what he meant by his statement. Was he offering her protection? Or something more? The car took a sharp turn, and Lily noticed they were heading toward a more secluded part of the city. The buildings became taller, more imposing, their windows reflecting the night sky like dark eyes. Finally, the car pulled up to a massive estate, a mansion that looked like it had been plucked from another era. The iron gates creaked open as they approached, revealing a long driveway lined with trees. The mansion loomed in the distance, its lights casting an eerie glow over the manicured grounds. "This is where you'll stay for now," Alexander said as he parked the car. Lily looked out the window at the grand structure, a mix of awe and fear creeping over her. She had never seen anything like this. "Stay?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What do you mean?" "You're not going back to your old life," he replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. "Not while there are people out there who want to hurt you." Lily's heart pounded in her chest. She didn't know what to say. She had no idea who this man was, what he wanted from her, or why he cared so much about her safety. But for the first time in a long while, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: hope. They stepped out of the car, and as they walked toward the mansion's entrance, Lily couldn't help but glance back. At the car, the world she had known, the world of struggling, of barely getting by, seemed so far away now. But in its place, something new was emerging. A world of power, of danger, and maybe of love. Alexander opened the door for her, and they stepped inside the mansion. The air was thick with luxury, the floors gleaming with a polished shine. "You'll be safe here," he said, his voice low and reassuring. "I'll make sure of it." Lily nodded, her mind racing. She wasn't sure what this all meant, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life had just changed forever. "I had never imagined a life like this." The mansion that now stood before me was like something out of a dream, tall, imposing, and decorated with luxurious details that I had only seen in movies. As Alexander led me through the grand hallway, my steps echoed on the marble floors, and the walls, adorned with priceless art, seemed to watch me. I felt out of place, like I didn't belong in this world of wealth and power. Alexander, however, moved effortlessly through it all, as though this was his natural habitat. He was at ease, confident in every step, while I felt like a fish out of water. "Come with me," he said, his voice smooth as he turned to lead me down a corridor. I followed, unsure of what awaited me, but there was something about the way he said it that made me feel safe. "This is your room," he said, stopping in front of a door. He pushed it open, revealing a space that took my breath away. The room was massive, decorated in soft, elegant tones, with a view of the city lights stretching out below. A king-sized bed sat in the center, and the entire room exuded a sense of calm and luxury. As I stepped inside, I couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. A part of me wanted to run, to leave and go back to my old life, however chaotic and uncertain it had been. But another part of me, the part that had been running for so long, felt a strange pull to stay. "I know this is a lot," Alexander said, his voice breaking through my thoughts. "But you're not alone anymore. You're safe here." I turned to look at him. His expression softened just for a moment. For the first time since I had met him, he didn't seem so distant, so controlled. He seemed human. "I don't understand why you're doing this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why me?" Alexander took a step toward me, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. There was something in his gaze, something that made me trust him, even if I didn't fully understand why. "Because you don't deserve to live in fear anymore," he said simply. "And because I won't let anyone hurt you." His words hit me like a wave. I had been alone for so long, fighting every battle by myself, trying to protect my son, trying to survive. The thought that someone, especially someone like Alexander, would stand up for me, that was a feeling I hadn't known in years. "I won't let them hurt you," he repeated, his voice steady and sure. I felt my throat tighten, a lump forming as tears threatened to rise. I had been so strong for so long, but now, in this moment, I was finally allowed to let my guard down. The weight of everything I had been carrying for so many years felt like it was finally starting to lift. Alexander's presence, his promise, was like a shield around me. I had no idea what the future held, but for the first time in a long while, I felt like maybe, just maybe, it was going to be okay. Thank you, I said, barely able to speak the words, but they felt right. I don't know how to repay you. Alexander shook his head, his gaze softening. You don't owe me anything, he said, his voice gentle but firm. Just stay safe. That's all that matters. With that, he turned and walked toward the door, leaving me alone in the room. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the city lights outside the window, processing everything that had happened. It felt like my life had been turned upside down, but somehow, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, even if I didn't know what that was yet. But one thing was clear, Alexander had changed everything, and I wasn't alone anymore. I spent the next few days trying to process everything. The mansion felt like a dream I wasn't quite ready to wake up from, a place where I no longer had to worry about paying rent or choosing between food and bills. Yet, the strange weight of my new life, of everything Alexander had promised, hung heavily on my mind. I had always been a fighter, forced to navigate life alone, but now, I found myself in a world I barely recognized, a world where I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was being taken care of, but at what cost? The days passed quietly. Alexander kept his distance, respectful of my space, but I could feel his presence in every corner of the mansion. He wasn't just the man who had saved me. He was something else, something more. One afternoon, as I wandered the expansive gardens, I saw him again, standing by the grand fountain, watching the water cascade down. The sun glinted off the marble, casting shadows that danced across his features, making him look even more formidable. You're out early, he said as I approached, his tone casual, but not without an undercurrent of something deeper. I couldn't sleep, I admitted, my voice quiet. Too many thoughts. Alexander turned to face me fully, his dark eyes assessing me with a sharp intensity that made me feel as if he could see straight through me. It's normal, he said, his voice low. Your world has changed. You'll need time to adjust. His words hung in the air between us, and for a brief moment, I considered what he meant. My world had changed, no question about that. But what did that mean for me? Was I truly safe here, or was I just a pawn in his game? Thank you, I said, more to fill the silence than anything else. For everything. Alexander smiled, but it wasn't the easy, charming smile I had seen before. It was something more sincere, almost vulnerable. I'm doing what's right, he said simply. No one should have to live in fear. His words struck a chord deep within me. I had lived in fear for so long that I hadn't realized just how much it had shaped my life. Fear had driven every decision I made, every step I took. But now, in this strange, luxurious world, I felt something different, something like hope. And what now? I asked, unable to keep the question inside any longer. What do I do here? What happens next? Alexander's gaze softened, and for the first time, I saw something. Other than control in his eyes, something like understanding. You live, he said, his voice gentle but firm. You rebuild your life. You raise your son. And when the time comes, you make the decision that's right for you. I stood there, the weight of his words settling around me. I had been running for so long, but maybe, just maybe, I didn't have to anymore. The thought was terrifying and liberating all at once. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again, like I had a chance to make my own choices, to live without constantly looking over my shoulder. I don't know if I'm ready, I whispered, almost to myself. Alexander stepped closer, his presence comforting rather than intimidating. No one is ever truly ready, he said softly. But sometimes, you have to take the leap. I looked up at him, meeting his gaze, and in that moment, I realized that I wasn't alone anymore. Whatever the future held, I wasn't facing it by myself. And that was more than I had ever dared to hope for. I spent the following days in a quiet haze. Life at the mansion was nothing like what I had imagined. It was beautiful, overwhelming, and completely foreign to me. Every corner of the house seemed to carry the weight of generations, each room more grand than the last. It was hard to believe that I, Lily Carter, a single mother from the streets, now lived in a place like this. The contrast was almost suffocating. I would stand by the window, looking out at the sprawling garden and the city beyond, and wonder how I ended up here. Alexander had kept his word. He was always there when I needed him. But there was an unspoken tension between us, a wall I couldn't quite break through. He was protective, yes, but also distant, as though there was a part of him he didn't want me to see. Despite his kindness, I could sense a darkness in him, something he kept hidden beneath his calm exterior. One evening, after dinner, I found myself walking through the garden again. The moon was full, casting a soft light over everything. The air was cool, and the scent of flowers filled my senses, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I had been trying to make sense of everything, the life Alexander was offering me, the future that seemed to stretch endlessly ahead of me, the feelings I was beginning to have for him. But what did it all mean? Was I safe here, or was I just another pawn in his world of power and control? As I walked, I heard footsteps behind me. Turning, I saw Alexander coming toward me. His suit was dark against the night, and his eyes, those eyes, were fixed on me with that same intensity that always made my heart race. "You're out here alone," he said, his voice low, almost soft. I nodded, unsure of what to say. "I needed some air," I replied. "It's been a lot to take in." Alexander took a step closer, his presence undeniable. "You don't have to do this alone, Lily," he said, his voice softer now, as though he was trying to break through the walls I had built. "You have me." His words sent a shiver down my spine. I didn't know if it was comfort or fear I felt, but it was real, undeniable. "I know," I whispered. I don't know what to do with all of this." He reached out, gently cupping my cheek with his hand. The touch was warm, but there was a tension in the air, an electric charge that seemed to grow between us. "You don't have to know everything right now," he said. "You're safe, Lily. That's all that matters." His words should have reassured me, and part of me wanted to believe them, to believe in him. But another part of me, the part that had been on guard for so long, couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. I had never been good at trusting people, especially not men like Alexander. But here I was, standing in his world, and for some reason, I didn't want to leave. Not yet. I leaned into his touch, closing my eyes for a brief moment, and when I opened them, he was closer, his face inches from mine. "Trust me," he said quietly. "I won't let anything happen to you." In that moment, I realized something. I had spent my whole life running, hiding, trying to protect myself and my son. But now, with Alexander, I was beginning to understand what it meant to stop running, to let someone in, to be protected. Maybe it was time to let go of the fear. But as I looked into his eyes, a small part of me still wondered what he wanted from me in return. What did a man like Alexander expect in exchange for the protection he offered? I didn't have the answers, but for the first time in years, I was willing to find out. I spent the next few days settling into a strange new rhythm. Life at the mansion was quieter than I expected, and yet it felt like the weight of the world had lifted from my shoulders. I no longer had to worry about where my next meal would come from or how I would pay the bills. Everything I needed was at my fingertips. But despite the comfort, there was still a lingering unease inside me. I had been living on the edge for so long, constantly fighting to survive. Now that I was finally in a safe place, I didn't know how to let go of that tension. Alexander, however, seemed to be doing everything in his power to help me adjust. He was patient, always there when I needed him, but never pushing me too far. One evening, after a quiet dinner, he suggested we take a walk in the gardens. The idea of being outside, away from the mansion's imposing walls, was appealing. "It's a beautiful night," he said as we walked side by side, the soft breeze rustling the leaves around us. The moon hung low in the sky, casting a pale glow over the well-maintained grounds. It was peaceful, and for a moment, I felt a sense of calm that I hadn't felt in years. "You've been quiet," Alexander remarked, his voice breaking the silence. "What's on your mind?" I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. I had so many thoughts swirling in my head, so many questions about what was happening between us, about what he expected from me, and what I was willing to give in return. "I don't know," I said finally, letting out a breath. "I guess I'm just trying to figure out what happens now." He looked at me, his dark eyes softening. "What happens next is up to you," he said. "You have the power to choose what your future looks like." His words felt heavy, like he was offering me more than just safety. He was offering me a chance to take control of my life again. For so long, I had been at the mercy of circumstances, constantly trying to survive. But now, with Alexander, I was being given an opportunity to rebuild, to live differently. You've already given me so much, I said quietly, glancing at him. I don't know how to repay you. Alexander stopped walking, turning to face me fully. You don't need to repay me, he said. You're here because you deserve it. You don't owe me anything. I felt a warmth spread through me at his words, and for the first time, I allowed myself to believe it, to believe that I deserved this. It was hard to let go of the guilt, to stop feeling like I had to earn every moment of peace. But maybe, just maybe, I was allowed to be happy, to stop fighting. I don't know what the future holds, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But I know I don't want to face it alone. Alexander stepped closer, his hand reaching out to gently take mine. You won't have to, he said. I'll be here, no matter what. His words, his touch, made me believe him. Maybe I was scared of what the future would bring, but in that moment, I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone anymore. And that thought, simple as it was, gave me the strength to face whatever came next. I woke up the next morning to a soft knock on my door. The light from the rising sun filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow across the room. I had slept better than I had in years, the kind of deep, uninterrupted rest I hadn't known since before everything had changed. I stretched, slowly rising from the bed, the soft fabric of the sheets slipping off me as I made my way to the door. Good morning. Alexander's voice greeted me softly as I opened it. He was standing there, his usual calm demeanor in place, but there was something different in his eyes today, something like a quiet anticipation. Good morning, I replied, trying to shake off the lingering sleepiness from my mind. What's going on? I thought we could have breakfast together, he said, stepping slightly to the side to reveal a small breakfast tray in his hands. It's a beautiful day outside, I thought. You might like to take a walk after we eat. I glanced down at the tray, noticing the assortment of fresh fruit, eggs, and freshly brewed coffee. It was nothing like the quick meals I was used to grabbing before running out the door. It was thoughtful. That sounds nice, I said, stepping back to let him in. I could use a little fresh air. As he placed the tray down on the table, I took a seat at the small, round table near the window. Alexander sat across from me, the silence between us comfortable, not awkward, as I picked up my fork and dug into the food. The meal was simple but delicious. Everything seemed to taste better in this new life, in this new place. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, while Alexander watched me, his gaze not uncomfortable, but intense in a way that made me feel like I was under his full attention. I've been thinking, he began after a few moments, breaking the quiet, about what you said the other night, about not wanting to be alone anymore. I froze for a second, my fork pausing midway to my mouth. I started, unsure of how to respond. You don't have to explain yourself, he interrupted gently. I just want you to know that you're not alone, Lily. And you won't be. I'm here. Whatever comes next, I'll be here. I looked at him, searching his face for any sign of hesitation, but there was none. He meant every word. A small part of me wanted to resist, to remind him that I had always been the one to take care of myself, to remind myself that I didn't need anyone else. But deep down, I knew that wasn't true. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't just surviving, I was living. And maybe, just maybe, I was starting to believe that I didn't have to do it alone. Thank you, I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. He smiled, a soft curve of his lips that made his usually stoic face seem warmer. You don't have to thank me, he replied, his voice low and reassuring. I'm not doing this for gratitude. I'm doing this because it's right. We sat in silence for a moment, the sounds of the outside world slowly creeping in through the window, the distant hum of the city, the rustle of leaves in the wind. It was peaceful, almost surreal. Are you ready for today? Alexander asked after a while, his gaze softening slightly as he studied me. We've got a lot to talk about. I nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. I wasn't sure what a lot to talk about meant, but I knew one thing for certain. Everything was changing. I wasn't sure where this path would lead me, but for the first time, I felt like I was walking it with someone who cared, someone who was genuinely invested in my future. And that made all the difference. Alexander stood, offering me his hand with that same steady calmness that had become so familiar. Let's go, he said, a quiet confidence in his voice. I took his hand, feeling a surge of warmth at the simple gesture. As we walked out of the room together, I couldn't help but feel that for the first time in my life, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. I followed Alexander through the grand halls of the mansion, my mind still spinning from the conversation we had shared over breakfast. I had always been a woman who carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, determined to do everything on my own. But now, here I was, in a place where someone like Alexander, was offering me something I never thought I would have: peace. We made our way to a private study, where a large desk sat covered in papers and files. It was quiet here, far from the noise of the mansion, and for a moment, I felt like I could breathe freely. Alexander gestured for me to sit across from him, and I did, my eyes scanning the room. "This is where the real work happens," he said, leaning back in his chair. "It's where we plan, where we make decisions that affect everything." I nodded, unsure of what exactly he meant. "Decisions about what?" I asked, my voice hesitant. Alexander's gaze softened, and he leaned forward, folding his hands in front of him. "About our future," he said. "About how you fit into it." I felt a lump form in my throat. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He paused, as if considering his words carefully. "I've been watching you, Lily," he said, not in a way that's invasive, but in a way that makes me believe you have something special. You've been through a lot, and you've come out stronger on the other side. I believe you have the potential to help me, to help us all. I stared at him, unsure of what he was asking. "Help you with what?" I asked, feeling a mixture of confusion and unease. "I run a business, Lily," he said, his voice calm but serious. "And in this business, trust is everything. I need someone I can rely on, someone who can see the bigger picture. I think you can do that." The weight of his words settled on me, and for a moment, I wasn't sure what to say. I had never been involved in anything like this before, and the idea of getting involved in something so complex was terrifying. "But I'm not like you," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I don't know anything about this kind of life. I've only ever known how to survive, to take care of my son." Alexander's eyes softened, and he stood, walking around the desk to stand next to me. He placed a hand gently on my shoulder, and his touch, while firm, was comforting. "You don't need to know everything," he said. "What I'm asking is for you to trust me. Trust that this life, this world, will be different for you. You won't be alone, and you'll have the chance to be part of something bigger than yourself." I looked up at him, seeing the sincerity in his eyes. For the first time since meeting him, I allowed myself to believe him. "I don't know if I'm ready for all of this," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if I can be a part of this world." Alexander smiled, a small, understanding smile. "You don't have to be ready," he said softly. "But when you are, I'll be here. And you won't have to do it alone." His words felt like a promise, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I might be able to make a choice for myself. Maybe I didn't have to fight anymore. Maybe, just maybe, I could let go of the fear and allow myself to trust in something, in someone else. I stood up, facing him, and nodded slowly. "I'll think about it," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I just need time." "Take all the time you need," he said, his hand still resting gently on my shoulder. "I'm not going anywhere." As I walked out of the study, I felt a strange sense of relief wash over me. I didn't have all the answers, and I didn't know what the future held, but I felt a glimmer of hope that hadn't been there before. Maybe it was time to stop running and start living. And for the first time, I felt like I might be ready to do just that. I spent the next few days in a whirlwind of thoughts, trying to process the events that had unfolded. Alexander's words echoed in my mind constantly, his promise to help, to protect, to stand by me. For someone who had spent her entire life surviving on her own, relying on no one but herself, it was a difficult thing to accept. But there was a part of me, deep down, that was starting to believe in him, in us. The days were peaceful, almost too peaceful. Alexander was still distant, but there were moments, small moments, when I could see a side of him I hadn't noticed before. We would share a quiet meal, and he would look at me, not with the calculating gaze I had first encountered, but with something softer, almost caring. And every time, that spark of warmth in his eyes made me wonder if there was more to him than just the powerful, intimidating figure he portrayed. One afternoon, he asked me to join him for a walk around the property. I was hesitant at first, still unsure about how much I could trust him, but the more time I spent with him, the more I realized I didn't want to be alone anymore. I followed him through the gardens, the sun shining brightly above us, the air warm and comforting. As we walked, I couldn't help but notice how much his presence had become a part of my life. He had become a constant, something steady in a world that had once felt so chaotic. Lily, he said after a while, breaking the silence, I need to tell you something. I glanced at him, surprised by the seriousness in his tone. What is it? I asked, my heart suddenly racing. I know you have doubts, he began, his voice low, almost cautious. And I don't blame you. I'm not asking you to trust me overnight. But I want you to understand something. This life, my life, it's not easy. And it's not for everyone. I don't want you to feel trapped or obligated. His words caught me off guard. I had always felt like I was walking on thin ice, afraid to make a wrong move, to let myself fall too deep. But hearing him say this, hearing him acknowledge my fears, made something inside me shift. I'm not asking you to change who you are, he continued, his voice softer now. But I do want you to know that you're not alone. And whatever happens, I'll be here. For the first time, I felt like I could breathe. I wasn't sure what the future held, but in that moment, I felt like I was finally free to make my own choices, to live on my own terms. As we reached the edge of the garden, I stopped, turning to face him. Thank you, I said, my voice full of emotion. For everything. Alexander smiled, that familiar, calm smile that always seemed to put me at ease. You don't have to thank me, he said. Just know that I'm here. And I'm not going anywhere. I stood there for a moment, the weight of his words sinking in. I wasn't alone anymore. I didn't have to fight for survival every day. I could live. And maybe, just maybe, I was ready to start trusting again.